Hi everyone and welcome to my new video where we are setting up my bullet journal for March. I'm very happy with how this theme turned out and I hope you will find some inspiration from this video as well. I wanted to do a theme with flowers this time and go for a bit more neutral color palette after having a super colorful theme in February. I decided to draw some simple cherry blossoms because they are just really easy to draw and I didn't want to do anything super complicated. By the way, I have posted a short where I show you how I draw cherry blossoms, so I will link it in the description if you want to check that out. Anyway, since March is also Endometriosis Awareness Month, I wanted my theme to resemble that in some way, so I drew the cherry blossoms in the shape of a uterus. I've made 3 other endometriosis themed setups in the past, so it was a little bit tricky to come up with a new design, but I think this turned out really well and I like that it's not super obvious like my previous theme related to this. I wanted my line work to have thick and thin lines, so I used 0.5 size fineliner for the main outlines and I drew the leaves and petals very loosely to get a bit more organic look. I actually didn't even look up some reference photos and later found out that apparently cherry blossom branches don't have that many green leaves, but that's fine as this doesn't have to be super realistic anyway, and I guess you can still tell that these are cherry blossoms. For the header I used my all-time favorite calligraphy pen, which is the Tombow fudenosuke with a hard tip. And by the way, I have listed all the supplies that I used in the description, so check that out if you are wondering which notebook I use, for example. After the outlines were done, I started adding some details in the flowers with a thinner 0.1 fineliner, and I again did this very loosely to get that more organic look. Cherry blossoms have a dark center, so I added a bit more line shading in there, and for the leaves I basically just added lines on the places where the leaf curves up a little bit. This might seem more difficult than it actually is, and I think these cherry blossoms are one of the easiest flowers to draw, so definitely give them a try even if you are still a beginner with drawing. Because the lines have different thicknesses, I think this illustration would work really well with black and white color scheme as well, but in that case I would probably add a bit more black details for more dimension. Anyway, for the colors I obviously wanted to use pink, and I started off by adding some base color with a very light Tombow dual brush pen, which you can barely see on the page. Then I slowly darkened up the center of the flower with different shades of pink and red, and I also added some shading in the leaves as well, or petals I guess. You could also use just water-based markers for this, but I feel like the colored pencils have a bit softer look, which I prefer. It's also nice that you can layer them if you don't have the perfect shade, and that gives a little bit more realistic look I guess. As I live in the northern Finland, March is still like a winter month for me, and we don't have any flowers blooming yet. I think cherry blossom season starts in March or maybe April in some countries, so I guess this theme is fitting to the season. I'm sick of winter at this point, so I definitely need a spring touch and flowers in my bullet journal to get through the rest of the winter. Right now it's about 0 degrees Celsius and it's very slippery outside because the snow has turned into ice as it's been raining in the last couple of days. Anyway, for the leaves I wanted to use this very warm green shade because it gives a bit more vintage look, and I feel like a cooler green shade would have made this illustration look more summery and bright. I wanted to color the leaves in the same way as I did the petals, so I left some spots without color to have a bit more three-dimensional look. Because I didn't have a lighter green marker, I used a light green and yellow colored pencils to blend the harsh contrast a little bit. And I think this worked out pretty well as I was able to create a similar color with the dark Tombow but in a lighter shade. Finally, I wanted to add some pop of gold, so I colored the little circles in the center of these cherry blossoms with that. I don't know what those things are called in English, so let me know in the comments if you know the name of them. I wanted to add a bit more structure to this spread, so I drew this rectangle behind the flowers with the gold, and I turned the notebook around a little bit so drawing straight lines would be easier. For the final touch, I added a grid with a light grey color on the gold rectangle, and I really like the look of that as it balanced out the warm shades nicely, but you could also use a light brown for this. Instead of making a quote page this time, I wanted to dedicate the page on the left for raising awareness about endometriosis. In case you didn't know, endometriosis is a chronic illness where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus, which can cause a lot of pain. Endometriosis doesn't have a cure, and it often takes 8 to 10 years to get diagnosed, as we are often being taught that painful periods are normal, and even many doctors don't have enough knowledge about this illness. I got diagnosed with endometriosis 5 years ago, I think, and I had been suffering with the symptoms ever since my period started at the age of 11. Endometriosis can have a lot of different symptoms, which probably can make it difficult to diagnose, and some of the most common symptoms are painful periods, urination and bowel pain, and ovarian cysts. If you are someone who struggles with painful periods, definitely go to see a doctor, as it's not normal if you can't, for example, go to work or school because of the pain. It's very frustrating that especially women's pain is not taken seriously, and that we don't have enough research about our health issues. Many people have to fight for years to be taken seriously and get diagnosed with endometriosis, which is why I want to raise awareness. I will leave some links in the description where you can find more information, so definitely check them out. Anyway, that's all I have to say about endometriosis this time, so let's get back into my cover page. I wanted to add some washi tape in the same way as I did on the page on the left, but it just didn't work with my cover page, so I ended up taking those pieces of washi tape off. Please let me know that I'm not the only one who does this sometimes and struggles with washi tape. I still wanted to add the washi tape though, so I ended up adding just this grid one on the top and bottom of the spread to tie these two pages together. Now that my cover spread is finally done, we can move on to the next spread, which is going to be my monthly calendar. I'm still doing my internship in March, so I'm going for a 2-page calendar layout once again since it's been working really well for me. I've had the best time at my internship and it's been really nice to study again. My training program ends at the end of March, so we will see what happens after that. I would love to hear how your year has been so far, so let me know in the comments. I actually made it to the local newspaper a couple weeks ago, which was very exciting because I haven't been interviewed before. They wanted to write an article about bullet journaling, so I told how I got started and also showed some of my old journals. Unfortunately, the article is written in Finnish, so most of you can't read it. The most scary part was definitely that they also took photos of me. Which was weird because I'm always behind the camera and I don't like to be in photos that much, but luckily they turned out well. That's actually a reason why I've never shown my face in social media, and I also like my privacy, but we will see. Maybe I will do a face reveal someday. Anyway, I wanted to keep this calendar spread pretty simple, so I just drew a couple cherry blossoms for the decorations. And for the calendar I used a pink Tombow doll brush pen in the shade 772 because I wanted a bit more colorful calendar. I drew another cherry blossom in the bottom of the spread, but cut that part out of the video so it wouldn't be too long, and you already saw me drawing that. You will see later the other cherry blossom though. The calendar boxes are 5 dots tall and wide, so I will have writing space for a couple different events during the day. I miss my one-page calendar layout a little bit because I could add more things in there than just the calendar, but I like that this layout is really functional, especially now that I have more things to write in here. This setup took about 4 hours, by the way, which is pretty quick for me. But you could always use cherry blossom stickers instead to save some time. I think the tracing paper trick that I've used before to make a transparent sticker would work really well too if you want to decorate the page with collages, for example. I think I might make some cherry blossom stickers in March if I have the time, because it would be fun to use those for my weekly spreads, and I don't think I have any cherry blossom stickers at the moment. For the final decorations, I decided to add some pieces of washi tape, and I think this green one worked really well with this spread, because otherwise it would have been a bit too pink. Next we are moving on to my tracker spread, and this time I'm actually going to be trying out a completely new tracker, which you will see soon. First we are making my happy tracker though, and for this one I once again decided to use some grid paper because I just love how it looks and it also makes the process a bit quicker. For the other boxes I used the same warm green shade that I used for the leaves, and at first I wasn't sure if I liked how it looked, but I think it worked out in the end with the decorations. I'm tracking the same habits as I did last month, but ditched the reading because I didn't read in February, and I have a feeling that it might not happen in March either. I would love to hear which habits you are tracking in March, so let me know in the comments. Because I have a new bad habit, which is ordering food, I decided to add cooking to my habit tracker, so I would be more motivated to do that. I used to cook a lot, but I feel like after 2020 happened, I just haven't been enjoying doing that as much. Maybe because I felt like I had to cook all the time because I spent so much time at home. Hopefully this will help, and I think I have to delete the World app on my phone, so I won't have temptations. Anyway, on the right side I'm making a step and sleep tracker because I feel like mood tracker hasn't been working that well for me, so it was time to change it up to something else. Because I didn't want to make the tracker sideways, I split it into 2 charts, and the way this works is that I have numbers from 2 to 10 on the left side, and I will think those numbers as thousands when I'm marking down my steps. I will mark my steps with a vertical line and sleep with a dotted line, and I will see if I can find a photo so you can see how it works. I haven't used this tracker in a while, so I'm excited to see how it will work for me and if I will remember to fill it in. I have a watch that tracks my sleep and steps, but I thought seeing an overview of the month might be helpful, as this way I can also make sure that I get enough rest. For the decorations, I just drew a cherry blossom on the empty bottom right corner, and I was thinking of adding a collage here instead, but then felt like I wanted to draw a bit more. I think this theme reminds me a little bit of my July theme last year, because I was using the same colors back then. If you want to do something a bit more simple, I will leave a link to that video so you can check that out for some more inspiration. Oh, and I forgot to say that I tracked just the hours I slept and not the time I went to bed and woke up, because I kind of tracked that in my habit tracker already. Anyway, for the final details, I again added some golden sparkles and also the grey grid behind the flower. I really like how the spread turned out, especially after adding the washi tapes for decorations, because it balanced out the green shades nicely, and I don't know, this might be my favorite spread from this setup. I also just remembered that I actually have a cherry blossom washi tape that I forgot to use in this setup, but I will definitely use that in my weekly spreads. Speaking about weeklies, let's move on to making those. Like always, I'm making a dot store weekly spread, but with horizontal dot stores this time. I cut the page from the 11th dot, I think, and used Exacto knife very carefully around the notebook's binding. This is probably my favorite layout to use in my weeklies because I can use more different kinds of layouts than with vertical dot doors. For my first weekly spread, I went for this box layout which has a good amount of writing space, and I used this gingham pattern for every other box to make the spread a bit more cozy. But you could also use different colored papers instead if you don't like the gingham pattern. For the other boxes I used the same warm green shade to keep this theme somewhat cohesive, and I just used my regular handwriting for the weekdays. Next week my friends are getting married, which I'm of course very excited about, and I will also take their wedding picture, so I hope the weather will be great as we are planning on taking it outside. Anyway, I would love to hear if you have any special plans for March, so let me know in the comments. For the decorations, I just wrote the header and made a mini calendar on the top left corner because I like how it helps to see how fast the month is going by, and mini calendar also helps when I'm setting up the other weeklies, so I don't have to flip back to my calendar page. I felt like I had already drawn a lot of cherry blossoms, so I wanted to draw them a bit differently on this page. I started off by adding some spots of color on the background with a pale pink and light gray, and for the gray boxes I also added a tiny grid so they would look more interesting. This time I drew very small cherry blossoms that were in a tiny vase, or I guess you could also say a menstrual cup. I've used this type of design in my old endometriosis related themes, so I thought it might be fun to bring it back to this theme as well. Because these petals and leaves were very tiny, I couldn't add that many details in them, so I just darkened up the center of the flowers and added one line in the middle of each leaf. I think this illustration would have worked really well without color too, because I used them in the background, but I ended up adding some in the leaves to tie the spread together. I didn't set up other weeklies this time because I want to make them a bit later, so I can change the layout if I need to, and I might also end up using the same layout throughout the month like I did in February if it ends up working really well for me. I'm really happy with how the spread turned out, and it's nice to have a bit more calm theme after the colorful parrots last month, even though I'm probably going to miss them a little bit. Now it's time for the final flip through, and I love how this theme turned out. It was fun to draw the cherry blossoms, and the color scheme is definitely very me, especially with all the pink shades. I would love to hear what you think of this theme, and remember to leave a like and also a cherry blossom emoji in the comments if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!